Hi, this is chapter 39 of The Night Singer. 39. It was just after 6 on Friday evening when Eric finally stepped through the front door. Nyla came running toward him in her new dress. It was pink and glittery and everything she loved. Hard to wash, too, in all likelihood, though that was something his parents-in-law didn't have to worry about. It's beautiful, isn't it? I'm going to wear it to Sally's party. Sally was turning 7 next weekend and had invited her friends to a party at Lilo's Soft Play Center. Possibly not the most practical outfit for somewhere like that, but Eric hoped that was something she might realize herself. Providing her clothes were weather appropriate, he and Cypria always let her wear whatever she wanted. She had gone to preschool in pajamas on several occasions, but when she tried to go in a swimsuit, Cypria had forced her into a pair of trousers. Nyla had started at Lindo School in the autumn, and generally made do with tights and a sweater. Right now, Sally was Nyla's best friend, but just a few weeks earlier, Nyla had come home in tears because Sally had said that her arms were brown. But they are, Eric had replied, repeating the same thing he had in similar situations before, that everyone looks different and that no one is better or worse than anyone else, that anyone who claims otherwise is wrong. Did Sally say anything else? He had asked, but Nyla simply shook her head. Still, the tears suggested she had interpreted her brown skin as something negative. Cypria came into the hallway with her parents and nodded happily when she saw what he was carrying, 2 down duvets. The plastic wrappers were dotted with tiny raindrops. It felt like it had been raining constantly for the past few hours, and Eric's body was aching, like he had actually been out hunting. He had very nearly decided not to bother buying the duvets at all, but he didn't have the energy for Cypria's reaction when things didn't turn out how she planned. That was the one part of their relationship that didn't quite feel balanced. She had more opinions and requirements of him than he did of her. I'm just tired, he thought. Avaka and Yadu greeted him with a hug and a kiss on the cheek. They had always seemed to like Eric. Still, he had trouble believing they were happy that their only daughter had moved so far away. Cypria's 2 younger brothers still lived in India. How was your day? Yadu asked. I hear investigating a murder. Eric nodded. That poor boy, Avaka exclaimed. But I'm sure you'll find whoever did it. Eric didn't share Avaka's unflattering optimism, but he liked how it made him feel when his in-laws talked about his work. Hopefully, he said. Eric could smell the heady aroma of cooking from the kitchen, and Avaka excused herself to return to whatever she was making. He took off his wet coat and carried the duvets through to the master bedroom. His parents-in-law would be sleeping there during their visit, while he and Cypria squeezed into Nyla's room. Eric and Cypria made up the bed together. In the living room, Yadu and Nyla were playing chess. Though Eric couldn't understand what they were saying, he could work out what was going on. The old man was trying to teach her the rules, and Nyla was making up her own. Cypria made a brief, half-hearted attempt to help out in the kitchen. Then she and Eric went out onto the balcony with a glass of Chardonnay each. The balcony was Eric's favorite part of the apartment. He loved the views out over the Kalmar Strait, being able to hear the waves and the seabirds. The storm was moving away and the sky had brightened. The rain and the gentle breeze, all that were now troubling the surface of the water. Being so close to the water was what had convinced Eric to compromise on where they lived, but he still couldn't get over his dream of a place in the countryside, some place where he could start growing his own vegetables. Having a plot of land didn't feel like enough, because he didn't just want to grow things, he also wanted to try out some of the ideas from the book he was reading, preserving food and generating electricity. If he could just find a little summer house or crofter's cottage for sale, they might be able to afford it without having to move. You'd think she would just be tired after a long flight, Cypria said in Swedish. Just thank her and accept her help, Eric replied. They usually ate pizza on Fridays because neither of them had the energy to cook. Whenever Eric's parents came to visit, they spent all their time with Nyla and only came through to the kitchen to eat. He sometimes thought it would be nice for them to live closer, but they had no plans to leave Malmo. I have to go into work tomorrow, he said. Yeah, I thought you might. We'll manage just fine, said Cypria. Nyla wants to show them the castle. Besides, my parents will be more impressed by you toiling away at work than trapezing around with us. She leaned forward and gave him a kiss. Plus, Sunday will probably be more than enough, she said, switching back to English. You're not planning on working then, too, are you? There was a sudden sharpness in her voice. An entire weekend with her parents so close was more than Sophia could handle on her own. Her mother was very similar to her and liked to share her opinions on how she thought things should be done. No, Eric replied, hoping that was the truth. How's it all going? Moving forward. Sophia laughed, but no matter how much he wanted to talk about the case, he knew he couldn't. Her laugh was actually the first thing Eric had noticed about her. She had laughed at the look on his face when he tried to push through the crowd at a literature festival in Jaipur, and she and her friend had decided to help him. How about your new colleague? Good. But she's a bit difficult. In what sense? She doesn't really say much. Sophia laughed again. Since when was that a problem for you? Eric found himself spilling the entire story about Hannah's father, how he had served time for a brutal, fiercely covered murder and then drunk himself to death, how Ove had been the one to lead the investigation. Brave of her to move back here, said Sophia. Or stupid. Some people need the place where they grew up. She took another sip of wine. Fix it, she said, like you always do. How? Invite her over tomorrow night, and try to be tactful about it. This time it was Eric's turn to laugh. You just want more of a buffer against your parents. Maybe, but does that matter?